Religion and science, the dogma. Now, within religion and science, and specifically religion, there's lots of what's called dogma. And dogma is basically stories, old wives' tales, and little details that have been passed on throughout centuries that basically have made religion something that it's completely not. So as time goes on, the story's changed, and even within our own culture, lots of traditions and things that certain families used to do due to superstition has been passed on now by elders because they were told so, that is part of religion, when definitely it's not. You've got to understand that there's culture and there's also things that people do in terms of habit, and that has also come into religion. Now, one of the things that is very interesting is that I have recently posted some comments on YouTube about a meditation video, and on the actual YouTube video it was basically a video of Sikh Gurbani, and on the actual video itself I referenced that the creative force, the divine feminine force, or the creative force within the universe, which the universe itself is a living being, is feminine. And somebody responded and said, "What is this nonsense? God is not feminine. God did not make himself in the image of a woman, and God himself is not feminine." Now, within the response is the very problem, because the person who responded indicated that God is himself, because throughout the stories, and this is not pointing a finger at Christianity, but throughout the ages and throughout the stories, we all have a reference of God as himself, he himself, or he. If you look at all of the scriptures and if you look at all of the writings, it's basically referenced that God is a he. I'm completely against that, because that is part of dogma. Christianity maybe, and other religions, even if you look at Islam, indicate that there's potentially a man in the clouds with a big beard and a staff, and he's watching over everybody. That's definitely not the case. Even within the ancient traditions in India, where you had super beings, or the gods of India, which were basically extraterrestrial in origin, Krishna and Shiva, and all of the hybrid gods like Hanuman, the monkey god, and Ganesh, and all of them, they were all basically descendants of a physical race of beings. God is not a physical within, as we understand it, in physical form. In fact, within Sikhism, it's described in the very early scriptures done by Guru Nanak, and again, there's a difference in opinion as time goes on within India, within Sikhism itself. Everybody has their own little spin on things, but within the early scriptures within Sikhism written by Guru Nanak, it's indicated that he's beyond birth, he's undying, he doesn't have an image, he doesn't have fear, he doesn't have hate. Basically, again, reference as he. Now, what else would they reference God as? Because you've got to understand that we have been dominated in matriarchal systems. There's patriarchal systems and matriarchal, and we're now living in a male-dominated system, and it's been that way for a few thousand years at least. But before that, in ancient times, perhaps several thousand years ago, it was female-dominated, and the goddesses and the warriors and people like that were actually female. And even female, the feminine force of Shakti is a very feminine force, is way superior than the masculine. So the warriors in ancient times were feminine, were female, but they were actually far more stronger in physical ability than men. which is very interesting. Now, there's dogma in lots of religions, one of them being the dogma in Islam is obviously you can have what you want, you can have several women if you do everything right according to the Quran and everything right according to Muhammad's teachings. Heaven will be a place where you've got unlimited things, unlimited women. Well, again, women and unlimited women and the indication of sex and everything like that is far from God itself, in terms of these are very materialistic desires. And again, within Sikhism and also even in Hinduism, desire is considered something that is very animalistic in terms of human, within human form. We've got to understand that within transcendence and growth, we will one day leave this planet. Human evolution does not reside on this planet. In Vedanta, they describe planetary systems and kingdoms of heaven, hell, and earth. And earth is basically very materialistic. It's a materialistic realm of the mind, but there is spirit, there is consciousness, and even advanced consciousness, God consciousness, where there is a bridge between the two realms, or the two dimensions, or the two worlds, whichever way you want to understand it. There is a hellish existence on earth if you look at all of the bad things that are happening, the wars and the killing, and basically when a person takes on that, has that frenzy of evil, when they commit evil crimes, when somebody is murdered, somebody is raped, and sins are carried out, that person is basically, their mind is operating from a dark place. And who's to say that that's not something that's being, in terms of energy, is not metaphysical from another place completely, but we are just almost like the puppets. We're acting it out, but that's coming from a different area. We are basically just vessels, and what is coming through to us and what acts we are committing is coming through because we are just vessels. And that's that frequency or metaphysical energy is coming from another place. Now, to make you understand that, if you look back at times where you've gone through phases, everybody has phases where you've been more spiritual, or you've gone through phases where you've got tired of the spirituality because it has to be in balance, and you've gone back to being, the way you were. Maybe look at drinking alcohol or going out with your friends, or there's been times where you've been very strict and you've not done that. You find that your actual mental ability changes with that. So, you'll find that if somebody is invested in desire, let's say lust, their mental abilities will be limited. They will forget things. They won't remember things. They won't be able to focus properly. So all of these things have a hindrance on the mind, and it's only within Jainism, Sikhism, Buddhism that it's effectively described that to be at your full potential. And that's actually one of the reasons for not drinking alcohol. The consumption of alcohol, not that it's a great sin, it's basically because it indicates that you're not going to be at your full conscious awareness, and the sin is basically to not appreciate the ability that somebody has to not express yourself at the full potential of a human is considered a disrespect. Because if I look at this planet today and think of how we would be if we were all growing our own food and building our own houses and had a very close social community, very close community where there wasn't any hate or anger or desire or a fascination for material, and that great rat race that everybody is on, and we were all content, and we were united in terms of we spent more time doing things for each other, then we would then be able to contemplate a peaceful existence, and also our abilities, our mental abilities would be far superior then as what they are now. So we've had this in the past. Are we going to this in the future? It's possible, but my personal understanding is that this planet will become, hellish in terms of what's going forward. We are on a timeline where that's been probably decided at the minute, decided not by super force but our own actions. So yeah, there's dogma within Islam. There's dogma within also Hinduism, that they believe that the dogma within Hinduism, Brahmaism, was basically that the people started to worship the alien gods like Shiva, and even Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh were sent to this universe and even this planet in materialistic form, because we can't contemplate what the other side is without being in this very physical materialistic existence. Because if we go to the other side, or if we basically pass on to the light and go into another dimension before we incarnate in another life or on another planet, it's just simply energy that travels at the speed of light. It's all awareness, it's consciousness, is infinite. It's like thought, and that side craves this side. From what I understand in my own development and own understanding of analysing things, that side very much wants to be in this side, in physical existence, to have that feeling of family and materialistic wants. And how can that then contemplate what we're contemplating in terms of God, spirituality and peace, if we're all striving to have peace in the materialistic existence? Then ultimately we have peace in the spiritual existence. But we seek opposites. So when we have one thing, we want something else. When we have lots of money, for example, people might not want it as much. They might value their time more than money, and that's usually the case. Well, they value their time more than money because within their time they obtain peace. Hindu means thief in Persian, because Hindu was denounced to those who actually ran from the schools of thought around 5,000 or 6,000 years ago. What was happening is the actual hybrid beings that had bred with the female of earth, so the daughters of men, as in the Bible, the hybrid Vishnu beings had developed their own ego, and because they had abilities and powers, because they were simply from another planet, they started to invest themselves in corruption. And when the Hindu people experienced this and witnessed this, there was a metaphysical darkness of ignorance placed within India, and the Hindus were those who actually fled from the schools of thought, the rishis, the seers, the yogis, the Shud, the Vesh, all of these people who had infinite God consciousness and wisdom, even being able to actually manipulate matter with their mind, so mind over matter, able to levitate, able to move objects with their mind, telekinesis, psychometry, all of these psychic abilities that were developed within actually developing the mind, and even simply being able to go within their own body from meditation to actually able to heal themselves. Now, in modern times, in a lot of Sikh scholars who are actually these people that have returned again to this planet through reincarnation to complete themselves, basically given another chance to complete their own mission, have actually been able to heal cancer. And the Sikh Guru Bani has within it a quantum science, a capability of healing the very chemistry. There's been many people, and this research has been done in universities in America mainly. I think one of them was California, where you can look it up online, the Sukhmani Sahib Path, basically, which is Shabbat, which is around 1 hour 15 minutes of prayer, which is basically talking a lot about people's worship the worship of God and how great the Creator is, and chanting that name basically from remembering God, we are washing away our sins. So all of our sins are causing ailments in the body, all of our wrongdoings are causing ailments in the body. And this prayer has been observed scientifically, and they've analysed the brain, and there's physiological changes that actually occur just by listening to this prayer. So basically, the dogma is in every single religion, because you have to understand that even some of the beings that common man would refer to as God and worship, as it was done in Egypt, as was done with the Mayans, as was done with the native Indians, the shamans and the Hopi Indians, those beings are not God. And this is a very specific message within Sikhism, because even those gods, even those beings, those forms of bipedal life, have very specific weaknesses within their mind, and the actual operation of the human mind is very much a factor of the operation of this planet. So when you're on this planet, it's metaphysical. How you think, it will change. And this has been shown in one of the movies, Event Horizon, where they actually go into an area of space, and because there's metaphysical darkness, it actually affects the brain. Again, if you look at horror movies, where there's demonic entities, like a poltergeist haunting, it's always affecting the person's mind. It's those entities are able to get in the mind if there's an instability of the mind, and change a person's perception, change a person's feeling, change a person's thought. And it's always those who are closer to the light, as good people, who have this thing where the negative is attracted to them. And obviously, the brighter you are as a person, as a soul, you will find that you are hindered more by these metaphysical vampires and darknesses. And this is explained greatly in Vedanta and also in Hinduism. In fact, a lot of this is within the Gnostics and also paganism, which I will talk about later. Now, Muslim families that originate from India go back 3 or 4 generations. They were actually Hindu. They were converted to Islam through force. They either convert or it's their life. So through fear, they became Muslim. Now, in terms of a teaching, how can it be properly interpreted if it was placed upon someone without their own free will, through force? Islam means to surrender, but the Mughal rulers, who were corrupted by power, took that meaning literally. It's to surrender your perception or understanding of the fact that God is within everything. You can't get away from that. God is within every person. Even those who are slaughtered or converted to Islam, it does not matter whether they are a Hindu or a Muslim or a Sikh. The human itself has within the very genetics, has God, the Creator, encoded into that. This is why we feel great when we serve others, when we do acts of kindness, when we play our role in society and do something for somebody else. So that whole conception of acting from good intentions is coded within us. Now, the dogma within Islam is quite extensive, because within India, 1,000 years ago, and even before that, for a period of 3,000 years, 2,000 to 3,000 years, Hindus were being slaughtered in the masses. Islam literally means to surrender, but to surrender to acknowledging the presence of God, not to surrender to become a Muslim. Mughal rulers in their empires have no real perception of understanding that that presence of God exists within the very atoms and molecules. The professors of Vedic knowledge and Indianism understand that. So, to convert people to Islam, to think that Islam is growing across the planet because it has now become almost a cult. And I'm not just saying this because I'm a Sikh, because I'm very holistic and I respect every faith and religion, and I respect the peaceful Islam. But I have to sincerely say that within today's world that we live in, Islam is actually corrupt. The very preachers of the faith look down upon people of other faiths. And I'll tell you a very true story, which is personal to myself. We went to a theme park within the UK, and I was there with my family, and there were several Muslim people dressed in the traditional wear, which is great to see, and they were curiously looking across to myself and my family, because we dress how we want to dress. The physical appearance is an illusion, so I'm beyond that. My mental capability is something that is more important to me than the way that I actually dress, in terms of whether I'm wearing more traditional Indian clothes or whether I'm wearing English clothes. That doesn't matter. What matters is the way I think and how I focus my attention, and I don't think in a materialistic way. I don't judge people. But I was being judged by several Muslim people, and 2 hours into going around looking at the animals and on the rides, and I wasn't wearing an actual traditional turban, I was wearing more like a bandana, so I could go on the rides myself, something that's a bit more aerodynamic. And actually Sikhs won the UK magistrates in terms of not having to wear helmets when riding motorbikes, because in the 6 Anglo-Saxon wars the British fought, there was 84,000 Sikh soldiers that gave their lives to serve alongside the British, and we weren't forced to wear helmets then. So if we give our own life riding a motorbike, then that's the way it is. That's God's will. That's the way it is in terms of nature. I would say the Muslim people in the Middle East, in Iraq, in Persia, in those types of countries, are probably a lot more humble. There's the extreme Muslim people that are being corrupted with material, but them people are very down to earth. They understand equilibrium. They understand the equilibrium of the head, Brahma, and also the warrior side, which has to be in balance. And the universe itself is divine and just, and what we have in creation has come around and come about for a specific reason. Like I said before, the antimatter, the non-physical, is the construct of the physical in material existence, which is consciousness. But 2 hours into our adventure in the theme park, one of the Muslim people's child got lost, and I do have some remote viewing capability, and I actually overheard they were saying it's a little girl, and I actually found the child. She came towards me, and she was very close to a very dangerous area next to the train where the guests train, the train carrying the passengers to take them around the theme park was, and the train was coming, and this little girl, maybe at the age of 5 or 6, was walking across, and I looked at the girl and she came towards me. I instantly knew that it was the child that was lost, and I hollered over to one of the Muslim people and I said, "Is this your child that's lost?" And all of these people came around and they took the child, and they were very appreciative, but they didn't say thanks. But I seen it in their reaction and perception, especially within the women who looked across, because Muslim women have greater respect for Sikh men, because we actually prevented the Hindu women and the Muslim women from being murdered and raped and all of these things that were happening within India. And we see a lot of this today. There is a lot of propaganda around terrorism. A lot of it is false flags. You know, it is to reap the weeds that Islam has sowed. Not that I condone it, but it has to be balanced, because the Muslim world has caused a lot of unnecessary suffering on innocent people, and it's always the innocent that suffer. But I've seen it in the reaction of these people that they were grateful, and their psychology told me that again it was a Sikh that came to the rescue, which is God's will. Sikh means a student, to seek, to serve, to learn. We are here to learn. We've come into this materialistic environment and world and duality to learn and to remember the source that we've long forgotten through countless lifetimes. We did not evolve from chimpanzees, which again is dogma. We evolved from gods. We are descendants of God, all of us, every faith, every religion, every man. Whether them gods are a super being or a super species out there that have spliced our genes with chimpanzees and primates to make Homo sapien. Within our very genome and construct of who we are is humility, is belief, is faith, is a good nature. That's why we feel good when we do good things. That's why when we do things for others, we get a sense of satisfaction, which is beyond materialistic wealth. So that's very much a part of who we are. But there is an imbalance, like in the movie Star Wars. There is a disturbance in the Force, and there has been for a long time. This is a very metaphysical war, and even within Islam, the wrong people have been born and incarnated into that faith to cause destruction of that faith. We will see it in families where there's always somebody who is born into that family that is always respected and worshipped, but they cause the most destruction within that family. Because us humans have a fault. There's something wrong with the way that we think. We give credit to those who don't deserve it, and we discredit those who do deserve it. We can't see with our very eyes, with our brain, with our very perceptive capability and understanding, because this is something that we are losing. We are losing a perceptive capability. We are losing an instinctive intuition. We are losing intuitive thinking, intuitive knowledge. Because we are not only disconnected from the divine, we are disconnected from ourselves. Religion means to reconnect to the divine. We are disconnected from the divine, and we are also disconnected from ourselves. So there's something wrong in the way that we think. And this is one of the biggest factors within human existence that we need to correct. That until we don't correct the way we think, not what we think, but how we think, then we will always be making mistakes and going down a dark, ignorant path of illusion. There are Muslims who are more open-minded and have respect for others, because that is a part of who they are. That is a part of themselves. They are more connected to that divine. They haven't lost that connection. And they will not even mention that they are Muslim, because that's not the factor. As Guru Nanak said, before being a Sikh, a Hindu, or a Muslim, let's be human. Let's figure out what it means to be a human, what makes humans feel good, because we're all chasing things that don't serve us any purpose. We're all chasing the illusion. And this illusion and darkness fell into Islam around 2,000 years ago, maybe 1,500 years ago. India was a very dark place, and if it wasn't for the Sikhs, potentially 60 or 70% of the entire world would now be Muslim. And again, we're seeing something coming around where there is factions within Islam and priests that will actually pay money for a Hindu girl to be converted to a Muslim. They will pay money for a Sikh girl. They will pay even more for a Sikh girl to be converted to a Muslim, to be married and converted. There is more black magic in Islam than any other faith. There are priests who proclaim to be religious priests, but they actually want people's clothes, because attached to a person's clothes is the very being. When we wear something, it has an energetic residue. People are taking their clothes, their hair, and karma even itself is under attack. The karma that the divine cosmos has put into place is being changed. Those who have good karma and good things are looked upon as though they should have nothing. And people are having things, good people are having things taken away from them, whether it's wealth, whether it's family, whether it's their children, whether it's the way they look, whether it's their personality, the way they behave. I understand as an Indian, and other people who are in this faith of Hinduism or Indianism or even Muslim will understand what I'm saying, that black magic is now being done to change people, to change the very people that they are. And this is being done by Muslim people, by Muslim priests, by people who have the esoteric knowledge and are using that esoteric knowledge for bad, to commit great crime, great corrupt sin. It's a sin when you harm yourself and you don't respect what you have, but it's the greater sin when you harm others, especially innocent people. And this is happening in the world, and the world is oblivious. The world is blind. Everybody has the blinkers on. If you are not at your 100% intuitive capability that God has given you, and through sin you have lost that ability, you've muddied the water, and you don't have the perception, the wisdom and the guidance to understand what is happening in the world, then that's why the world is becoming more ignorant and darker. And this is why the systems and the government and the corruption and the music and the movie industry takes people into this corruption and darkness. This is very much why religion has already warned us of what is coming. Religion has warned us that there is a metaphysical path. There is a pattern here, that if you do this, this and this, the inevitable outcome is going to be this. It is going to be a world in darkness, a world invested in the wrong things. Everybody's had their fingers burnt. Everybody's been bitten in the backside. When they say if we don't do it now, it's going to come back to bite us in the backside. That's true, because it has to. Otherwise,
The universe is not just. The universe, there is no divine justice within the cosmos. The universe itself is just. Things are far greater in other places, and I've seen this, than they are on this planet. I've seen amazing planets. I've seen things you couldn't believe, where there's planets that have mirrors in the sky to synthesize daylight on a constant basis, where there's green fields, where there's organic food, where there's no need for fossil fuels and transportation, and the energy is free, where you're telepathic, where you can dematerialize from one location to another, where everything is there and you have time and peace to contemplate what creation is. And now look upon where we live, where you pay in taxes, where you have to pay to park your car, where people don't have common sense anymore. That common sense has gone, where they're all chasing the material and the illusion. It's not that religion is peripheral, that external. It's not that God is external to us. And Christianity and Islam have modern versions of those religions have indicated that God is external. How can a Muslim think that God is internal? If there's a monotheistic God that is in every single person, how can they think that person is a part of God if they're slaughtering those people to become Muslim? Why do they consume halal meat and carry out a prayer when that animal is slaughtered? They have even done the same thing when they have killed people, when they've beheaded people. They've beheaded men, women and children. The faith of Islam has got a great karmic burden on its shoulders. The people of the Islamic faith who are carrying out these things have basically got a huge karmic burden, and that burden is going to play out. That karma is going to balance, because if Muhammad was here, if Yeshua was here, if Buddha was here, if Guru Nanak was here, if Moses was here, if Abraham was here, if Adam was here, if all of those people were here today, they would slap the faces of these people and say, you've got it all wrong. You have gone so far down the bullshit route that you don't even know what anything is anymore. And religion was not created for this purpose. Religion was created to allow an individual to connect to themselves, and through themselves, through their own experience, because we are here for this experience, to find God again, because we are disconnected from God. Through your own experience to find God, not by converting other people, not by killing other people, not by murder, not by wars. This jihad, this holy war, this whole imbalance in religion, this whole thing where they think that things are going to be balanced out and they are going to be the victors in the end. The Sikhs already know the future. The Sikhs already know the future of who is going to come. The most highest spiritual Sikhs, with the knowledge, with the eyes to see the wisdom, will know that it will be a man wearing blue clothes who will come, who is the next Messiah. And it will be from Brahma knowledge, but it will be from Middle Eastern soil. It won't be the Western world. It won't be India. It will be from the Middle Eastern world, but his knowledge will be of Brahma knowledge. And he will be wearing dark blue clothes, like Khalsa, like the Khalsa within Sikhism. This whole unjust imbalance of murder and crimes that are being carried out is causing huge darkness, is causing chaos in the spirit world, it's causing chaos in the way reincarnation works. There is such an imbalance universally now that it has to be put right. So within Dogma, there's lots of things that have become untrue, and it's like history
history itself is not accurate. So if you consider all of that, every single religion has its dogma. The rulers of the world don't believe in God themselves. They don't have a fear of God. So what they've done is they've put in place chaos to say that the best way to pervert this control in terms of balance of nature, we have to appreciate and we have to respect, like I've said before, that there's laws. Now if we look at the native Indians, like Buddhism and like Sikhism, they acknowledge that because beings that are bound to the earth reincarnate through the cycle of creation and destruction in different life forms. So the native Indians believe that you will go into animal forms. The Sikhs believe that we come from animal form into human form. And basically in Buddhism, they also acknowledge that the animal forms are there as symbols. This was very true in terms of the Egyptian. One of the reasons why the Egyptians symbolize animals in nature. For example, if we look at the dung beetle, how it keeps turning dung and pushing and rolling excrement of animals. It symbolizes how creation and destruction cycles, how we go back into the earth, how our bodies turn back into soil, how even through cremation our ashes go back into the soil and back into the air and the sea and the 5 elements of where we come from. Because we are on this planet, we are made up of this planet. This is the whole reason why, if we look at animals within the animal kingdom and even African belief system of the Masai Mara and even Zulu traditions, they themselves believe that beings from the earth return back to the earth. Now, the dogma is to take that control and put a negative hand to it, put an evil hand to that, and say, well, let's exaggerate the control, let's make it divide and rule. And one of the interesting things I was listening to the other day was Jordan Maxwell, when he literally slates all religions and belief systems. And to a degree, I agree with some of what he says, but then I completely disagree. Because if we look at Zeitgeist, I once presented Zeitgeist to a religious saint, and the thing that he looked at when he seen that was, his answer to that documentary was, there has to be a master. Through righteous living itself, if we look at nature, the way nature works, then nothing bad comes from living in a righteous, and simply that's all religion was to teach us. 2 or 3 things. One, a perspective of that there's something greater than us in terms of a creator, so a monotheistic God. Secondly, that if there's suffering in the world, from darkness comes light. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And those who are in suffering today, those who look at conspiracies and look at the state of the planet, say that there's definitely something wrong with the world. they themselves could also fall into religion, and because their version of reality doesn't fit, they basically tend to look at things that are quote unquote not in front of you, but knowledge that's occult, that's hidden. And religion itself, the true essence of religion, the true teachings, was actually hidden as well. Within Christianity, the translations of the Bible, the knowledge itself, very subtle messages have been hidden. How did shaman Indians know, native Indians know that we return back to animal forms through reincarnation? They themselves interacted with extraterrestrial beings and beings from other planets and other dimensions. And this knowledge that we have on Earth, even what's accumulated over the years within religion, is not off this planet. People who have developed beyond this planet understand our area of development, of where humanity is in terms of a species. And to teach us, basically, it has to be put into a book, it has to be put into a Bible to say, follow this. Because there's no quick get-rich scheme in terms of, without any inner work, we will be able to transcend. Because the game is such a long game. Control so basically from righteous living, there is a level of order. And the ones, if we look at Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh, and if we look at within Hinduism, that Brahma appoints education systems, appoints government and systems. All of those weren't put into place to do bad initially. They were put into place for good. Is it the knife that's evil? Or is it the person who's controlling the knife or the gun or the weapon? This all to do with motive. Somebody could do you something, a bad turn, but because you do what you think is right within the grand scheme of nature, you will end up better off if that's what's been ordained by nature. Controlling the 9 openings on the body, the 9 physical openings, as I've said before, gets us to access the 10th non-material opening, which is higher awareness in the pineal gland. And Brahma in the Godhead is knowledge, so God consciousness. That's why Brahma is symbolized as having 10 heads. But then there's also the intuitive knowledge from the heart, and the brain tissue, utilizing the brain tissue that's on the heart. So basically we're going through all of these forms within nature and even human forms, simply to experience multiplicity as creators, but as limited human beings.
In terms of Buddhism and Taoism, these concepts are very practical and emphasize our existence within nature, which is something that's very real and part of the divine cosmos. Taoism and martial art itself means to honestly express yourself. So anything that's honest has metaphysical benefits. Teachings themselves cannot be understood by everybody. We always say it's due to interpretation, but that very person's interpretation is very much a part of their own development and understanding. If somebody is not meant to understand in the grand scheme of nature, they won't understand. Within Indian esoteric knowledge, and Taoism and Buddhism is just a fraction of Indianism. Taoism and martial arts also originate from India. But in the Eastern Indian esoteric knowledge And within Vedanta, which is where the technologies came from, the Vedic Empire of India was very technologically advanced. All technology is rooted within nature. If you look at all the principles and the modus of operation of technology, it very much follows the same principles of nature. But within the very esoteric knowledge, we say that a bird does not fly, it's flown, and a fish does not swim, it's swam. So if humans are on this earth consciousness, in this dimension, this fish tank that we live in, of air, of the elements of air, which is our life force, which is something that the matrix of the tree network provides us, that life force, then our very existence, the very equation of what we attain, what knowledge we attain, what virtues we attain, what abilities we attain, is part of that construct. So we ourselves are being orchestrated from a higher level. And not everybody is going to understand what I'm saying. Not everybody understands the religions. Not everybody understands the different levels of understanding. You can watch a movie. Several people will watch a movie and get a very different picture due to their own knowledge within their inner world. Because if the inner world changes, the outer world changes. That itself is very specific and very key to the creation's thinking, to the divine thinking, to the divine order of who will achieve that level of understanding. Personally, Sikhism is the newest religion, not Scientology. And around the year of 1600, through Mughal and also some British influence, the Guru Granth Sahib, the Sikh Holy Scripture, the 11th Guru, preserved within immortal form of a book, because it could no longer be passed on through the vessel, through the tenant, because all of the gurus were being targeted. Truth itself has a very destructive nature, and control and corruption are factors of material existence. So the truth itself is always at war, the light and the dark. The truth is light and dark is ignorance. So there is a war with truth and ignorance within people's minds, within people's lives. There are those that don't like the truth, and there are those that crave the truth. But with Sikhism being a new religion, its essence and knowledge has not yet been converted or translated or had an attack of deception where the true essence and the meanings have been changed and altered, which is what has happened with Christianity and even Islam. Much of Islam is due to interpretation, because even the Muslim scholars, when they've researched Muhammad's writings and the Hadith, which is something that Muhammad himself expressed, there is difference of opinions within the Muslim scholars of Islam. Islam itself being very limited and due to interpretation. And also when Muhammad found energy, he also interacted with negative beings. You've got to understand that the beings of superconsciousness, that personally I will cover in another chapter, but they themselves have orchestrated the religions. Then the religions invested in karma and dharma, the grand, wider understanding of this existence, which doesn't point at any specific individual, but more as a person, as a master, as a messiah, but to actually acknowledge the messiah within oneself. Those religions have a broader perspective. Only the common Indian people, Hindu people, started to worship idols, and those idols then developed their own ego. But within Sikhism, Jainism, Buddhism, there is no deception. Within Judaism, this is all a conglomeration of all the different teachings and knowledge. But it's only the two brothers, Christianity and Islam, that have made God something peripheral and external.